our informal session. Our agenda today, September the 16th, revenue discussion with Sukie Scheetz, Director, and Mary Raines, Budget Analyst for the Office of Management and Budget.
Good morning.
Good morning.
That time of the year, we did our tax budget back in June, and it's now time to think about what we're going to be able to appropriate going into 2016, so we have that in place before the year starts, which is right now scheduled for mid-November adoption. Typically what we've been doing is providing you with the revenue estimate, where we think this year is going to end up, and this is the first time we look at all of them. Tax budget had a revenue estimate. We just revise what was submitted, and we look at where we've been so far this year, and based on our crystal ball, try and figure out where we're going to end up and where next year is going to go. So I'll review that a little bit. I'll let you know where we are on our current operating appropriation and how we're going to potentially balance the appropriation for next year. So right at it, right to it. Our annual estimate of operating revenues. Now this is for general fund. So back in 2013, we had a actual operating revenue receipt of $49.6 million, with $22 million of that coming from sales tax. Last year, that 49.6 went up to $50.5 million, with sales tax going from 22.7 up to 23.9. And I'm talking sales tax, first of all, because it is our largest and most volatile type of revenue. This year, right now, you've seen where we've reported sales tax on a monthly basis, and it's been very strong. And with some of the changes that were made, and one of the bigger ones right now is the Amazon collection for Ohio, we look at 2015 to come in at $25.9 million. So that's a $2 million increase.
Weren't you anticipating about 300,000?
And my estimates were just based on some numbers that they were providing at a state level, but I think it's going to be a good number for us. But even before Amazon, we were close to a 9% year-over-year growth.
Wow.
So we're doing really well right now on sales tax.
Just think of the $9 million we could get if we legalize marijuana.
Exactly.
Oh, come on.
Right.
That was the projections, by the way.
Yeah, it was someone's wild projection.
Guess what's not in the revenue estimate?
Yeah, hopefully it won't be.
With that change in sales tax and some of the other changes that I'll go through and some of the details here in a minute, we're looking at a $53 million operating revenue this year. Going into next year, we have that growing a little bit. We've cut down on some areas that we know are not going to meet this year's target. We're getting a little conservative on conveyance fees going into next year, property transfers, and we do have a little bit less growth in sales tax, and you'll see what I mean by a little bit less here. So it's been historically for the last couple of years, and where we're looking at this year and going into next year, not a bad situation for us for general fund, which is something nice to be able to say for a change. So sales tax, I talked a little bit about it. What we've done with the 2015 estimate is changed it to an overall 8.4% average growth. We were at 9.2 through August. September should come in this week or at the latest Monday. So that'll give us a better estimate. There's a potential this will change between now and then, between now and the end of the year. As we see additional months come in, we'll tweak that to get it as close as we can to actual.
Sukie, just a quick, I'm not following, 8.4 average, but 9.2 year to date.
Right, so I've got a little bit less of a growth coming in for
the last
the
quarter.
last couple of months, yeah.
However, the last quarter is Christmas, so it's actually should be.
Christmas won't show up for us
January.
until March, pretty much.
Because they hold it a quarter?
No, they hold it. What gets sold in, let's say, December, gets paid to the state in January, and we get it in February. But the big spike in ours is in March, and our thought is that that's related to the gift cards, because when you buy a gift card, there's no sales tax reported on that until they use the gift card.
Not true.
So March is, February's been good, but March has always been our better month. So we won't get the holidays really, unless people do shopping in October. We'll get October and November. So the 8.4, so I do have a little bit lower growth rate for the last quarter of the
So
year.
the 8.4 is year over year, 12 months versus 12 months previous?
Yes,
And
the
and
9.2
year-to-date
is-
is just January through,
it's 8 months over 8
Right.
months, right. So I'm looking at a conservative 4% for next year, but even a 4% gives us another $1 million in revenues.
That is being conservative.
It's a
I think all your
drop from where
estimates
we
are very
are,
conservative, but I'm happy with conservative, so.
but Amazon hit us in August was the first
Yes.
time because they started collecting in June. So I'm only gonna get a half year of that one spike and then it'll level off. Unless we get a lot from our new retail that's going in up on the hill.
Yeah. Gorman's is going to bring in a lot.
Boardman's and
We have a lot of retail popping.
Kirkland's,
And Kirkland and Home Goods.
Home Goods, right. So it is conservative, but I need to do that in order for us not to get out of whack.
You want it that way.
Absolutely.
So that's what's in here for, and these are the assumptions that we use. That's what's in here for sales tax. Charges for services is a large group of revenue types. Some of the bigger ones are auditor fee, treasurer fee, recorder fees in there. So this year we're about where we were at last year. It's a little bit higher, about $62,000. But next year we're dropping some, and I already mentioned that I made a slight reduction in conveyance fee. I'm taking it back to where we were in the 13-14 timeframe versus what we're seeing a little bit this year. So it's like a 10% drop. There is a reduction in indirect costs because when I look at these, those numbers are from 15 this year's to next year's, and in indirect costs this year we had a late payment of a big 2014 indirect cost. It didn't show up till 15, so 15's artificially inflated. And I have a reduction in recorder fees. They've had a good year with recorder fees this year, but that's not something based on what we're doing with conveyance. They're all kind of tied together. We're reducing that a little bit. And then sheriff fees are down a hair. Property taxes this year, there's a 3% growth, which amounted to about $234,000. Going into next year, we're reducing that. I believe the auditor put in maybe no growth at all, but we've got a 0.5% for some of the permits for the new builds.
Which is the next is it triennial?
Update, 17.
17.
We just went 14 with a rebound.
Okay.
That's why you 3%.
Okay.
So 17 collected in 18. Yeah. Casino receipts. You saw where it's kind of tapering off in the reports that I provide every once in a while.
Imagine that.
Yeah. But it's not too far from our plan. We're really not going to be far off from what I had planned for this
You
year.
had a very conservative plan.
We did.
And unfortunately, you
Yeah.
met your conservative plan.
Sorry.
Unfortunately.
I have nothing to do with the people that show up. And maybe they're all winning money, which is a good thing, and they're coming to spend it in Clermont. That might explain our sales tax.
You are a Pollyanna.
So this year, we're looking at about a $61,000 reduction. There is only one more distribution, and we'll get it at the end of October, and it'll be for July, August, and September. So we pretty much know what July and August are. September's the only unknown on that one. And then next year, I'm keeping a relatively constant level. I'm reducing it a little bit, 2%. But I'm not gonna, we'll see how it goes. I don't think it's gonna completely drop off. I think people do like to do that. We've seen the impact of the racinos here and probably across the state in what we got in 2015. And I don't anticipate that those are gonna have any further impacts on our casino receipts going into next year. So this is still a little bit of the newness falling off. We do have a change to our lease revenues with Auto Title moving their storage over to their Beachmont location. We were leasing that space to them and bringing in a revenue, so we've taken that out of the 2016. Local government funds, the state's had a relatively good year, so our estimate for the remaining couple of months brings us to a $79,000 increase. 2016 was provided by the state, so that's another $29,000 increase over where we expect this year to be. Fines and forfeitures hasn't moved. It tapered down quite a few years ago, and it kind of just sits at that $1 million mark. No big fluctuation in that one. Licenses and permits, on the other hand, we had quite a few large permits this year with the 3 schools and apartment buildings. Carl, you are here, which brought in a lot of revenues. So we don't have that projected to happen again next year. So the $140,000 increase this year, I've got a offsetting reduction going into next year, which will bring it close to where it was in 14. Other intergovernmental, we talked about casinos already. We talked about local government funds. We've got assigned counsel and public defender, so we're holding that one flat. There's no big changes on the horizon for that. And we do have a small reduction in our state and federal grant type funds, just about $9,000. Investment income. Based on the current portfolio that we have, I've got this year has about $173,000 increase from last year. And $58,000 of that is the investments that we received from the final draw on the Ivy Point property, which I had planned to come in 16, but it actually came in 15. So you'll see next year's actually decreasing only because that was the last draw on the property, so there's no more investment earnings to be had there. We'll actually earn investment, we'll have investment earnings on that in the pooled fund, which is the funds that the treasurer holds. So we're kind of pretty much holding it, we're going up a little bit in 16, but nothing dramatic. So that one we'll look and see if they have any additional estimates as we continue down between now and the final appropriation time.
Does it make much of a difference, assuming that there's going to be an increase in interest rates?
It will make a difference. It's how quick we can get invested in those higher
That
interest.
wasn't part of your calculation.
It was originally, but as we go through those investment advisory, he throws out different options on what he's going to do for the quarter. So this was based on the one that he had done at tax budget time, and without having the additional $2 million in the pooled funds from the final Ivy Point draw.
I know
We'll update
did
it
not the
for-
Feds just meet recently, Federal Reserve?
Meeting
Today
now.
and tomorrow.
Is it today and tomorrow? Okay, decide whether to increase rates.
And it will have an impact. Now, it will supposedly immediately on our money market funds that are held, but we should be able to have some better options now for higher earnings, higher yields. So what did all that assumption do to us? What we have right now is a 2015 operating revenue estimate of $53.1 million, a 2016 revenue estimate of $53.5 million. Our practice has been to appropriate the current year revenue estimate, which would be the 2015, because we're pretty confident that we're going to get that level going into 2016. So we're going to set the target. Today, the target will be set at 53.1, 53,088. What does that mean compared to what we've already appropriated to departments? So if we look at what we started the year at, which was $50.9 million in our original appropriation for 2015, we've made a $7,000 reduction in the operating appropriation, and that was when we did the swap between overtime and one additional corrections officer at the jail. We reduced the appropriation, but for the savings we anticipate. It wasn't much, but it's a reduction. So our current operating appropriation is $50,886,000. If our target, based on the last slide, was 53.0, we have about $2.2 million that we can add to the current operating appropriation level, which is a good thing. However, we did go through tax budget back in July, and these are some of the larger increases requested from the different departments and elected officials. And these are the ones that we're going to have to sit down and make decisions on and discuss with these departments to see if they're real, because if all of this is absolutely required, this is going to eat up between $1.7 and $1.9 million of that 2.2. The first one on here is Board of Elections has requested in their tax budget a $491,000 increase, which included across-the-board salary increases. So we need to get with them because things have changed in their world with the electronic poll books in place. We've got to make sure that we they aren't asking for expenses that they don't no longer require because of some of the changes. And then we've got to see if we can get their salary increases back like we have done for the rest of the departments and elected officials to what we can authorize across the general fund. The FOP increases, that's bargained. That's pretty much a given, the 2.5% that they're going to get in 2016. That amounts to about $483,000 with the steps in there. Within BCC, we had quite a few staffing changes that were being requested at tax budget time, so we have to readdress all of these. They did amount to about $333,000 between facilities, ISD, planning, and building inspection. The auditor had some staff sharing request as well as an increase in the munis maintenance that amounted to $194,000. We do know that healthcare, and we may revise this a little bit based on a revision to the stop loss, how we're going to do stop loss for next year, which would potentially reduce this a little bit as well as the employees' share. But healthcare increases, we were looking at about 135 just for the general fund people. There are about a dozen employees that are exceeding their 30-hour average, and they're considered part-time right now, and they don't have health care. If they stay at the 30-plus hours and we're required to offer them health care, which is what I believe the Affordable Care Act requires, we're looking, depending on what plan they select, anywhere from nothing to $120,000 cost.
Now, is it that we have to offer them, or that they have to prove that they have the ability to get it?
We have to offer it.
That sucks.
Why don't we just reduce them to 29?
We have asked the departments to continue to analyze their part-time people, to keep them under 30, and it's not there yet.
Mhm.
We gave them emails probably first quarter this year to let them know who was where. We ran it again last week. I haven't actually discussed it again with all the departments, but it's the same departments. It's the same issues.
Is the 30 hours consistent in the future with the Affordable Care Act, or are they going to go up or down, or do we know? Is it?
No, I mean,
30
that's the way
hours
it's
always?
written, and there was no intent to change that in the legislator's mind. However, we all heard when the legislation kind of got tweaked
Yep.
last year that those people, that would be one of the things they would try and change.
I know they're changing a lot of stuff, like the age of your children living at home went from 29 to 27 or 26,
That
or
was-
the opposite
that was
direction
the
or
state.
something.
The state had it at 20.
Federal.
Is that a state?
And federal 26, right?
Yeah, and federal, they just moved the state to the
Trying to
federal
match 'em.
number. Yeah,
But there's nothing on the 30 hours.
right.
And the
So we
hope was
expect
that they
30
would
hours
try
to be
and
30
take it
hours.
back out and let the employer determine what's full-time, what's part-time.
So, okay, we offer it to them, but again, their spouse or whatever,
May have it.
May have it,
right?
so they don't.
need. That's why I have that range,
Yeah.
because we don't know whether they'll take it or not.
right?
Some of them are retired, PERS retired people, okay? If we offer it to them, the way I understand PERS is they have to take it. PERS doesn't want to be providing health care if the retired employee has the option to get it. Then we have some, and I grouped all these together because they're all under $100,000 individually. Veterans has asked for another service officer. Municipal clerk has asked for 2 additional positions. We know we have a public defender retiring this coming month, and they are replacing him with a full-time public defender, so that's pretty much a given. Probate court is asking for staff changes and additions up there. Juvenile court is asking for additions, and juvenile detention's asking for rate increases over and above what we give the normal people for their youth officers to get them more in line. They consider their youth officers, youth leaders to be way underpaid for what they're doing
they
up
are.
there. And
Honestly, they are.
when the sheriff hires, that's usually some of the places he can get corrections officers from our juvenile detention. So, and then CASC, you'll see CASC is a reduction, but it's a reduction because what we're doing next year is going to just a 25 client base. And what we had in this year, we had originally planned at 48 until we modified all of that. So that's where the 1.7, 1.
Beds of the jail instead. I mean, some of that went to opening beds in the jail.
The opening beds at the jail was in the 2015 appropriation, and it's full staffed in 2016. So it's kind of in that 483,000. That included annualizing the new COs, because they started in like April or May.
Surprised municipal clerk, they want to add a couple positions. I mean, with technology and all, you'd think people would continue to go, fewer and fewer people versus adding people.
And that's where the discussions have to come. Yeah.
Good, good, good.
So the 2.2, with these things out there to be determined, if we say we need $1.8 million, that only leaves us $400,000. And right now, a 1% salary increase for the non-bargaining people is about $212,000. So we're going to send out targets to the departments and elected officials. We will probably roll in a 2% salary because this is close to 2, and we know we're gonna be able to whittle down some of that 1.8 request.
Yep.
We'll be able to adjust that after the fact in our office after we get the request, the appropriation request back from the departments. It will also allow us to see things that have changed within the departments when they actually ask for an appropriation versus what they were thinking when they were doing tax budget. So it's a time to remesh all that up. So there may be things that aren't on this slide that have come up in the last couple of months that we're going to have to address.
Now, with the 53, where does that put us as far as our cash reserve percentage?
Our cash reserve right now is way over our 25%, okay? We're adding about $4 million, we think, this year to our reserves. There is a potential need for that in our county capital fund, okay, based on what these estimates come back in when we talk the domestic clerk and the record center and the engineer building versus what we have in as an estimate. So we'll be moving some of that to the county capital fund, but it will keep us above our 25%. And the fact, this level of operating growth from the 53.1 to the 53.5, as that used to materialize, and hopefully it'll materialize again going into 16, that excess goes into our fund balance also. And then becomes available, if it materializes in 16, becomes available for appropriation in 17.
So we don't want to go too far above our 25.
We've got issues where we have to address it over here. The other thing that we can do, and we haven't done it since the law changed, is our budget stabilization fund is not at the level that we can take it to. We were at 5% from a while ago, and we can now go up to 16%. So we may move money into that to set it aside because of the potential economic downturn again, which is, everybody's forecasting it. The thing that I don't see certainty on is when it's going to happen.
well,
19?
Yeah,
you have to see who's going to be.
it was 17 for a while,
Who's going
but
to be the next president, that'll tell you.
yeah, we'll see what the next president does.
Sukie, you and Mary prepared for me a couple months ago, and I forgot the report in terms of what the sum of it was, but it was about the non-bargaining employees and the increase,
Increases we've provided.
trying
over
to
the
follow
last
the
couple
cost of
years.
living increases based on inflation. And I forget, are we above or below over the last, say, 5 years?
We did 2.35% this year, and if I remember inflation, it was 1.7. So we were a little
But
bit
I'm just
above.
making sure the employees are keeping up with inflation.
Overall, no, we haven't yet made up for the years that we were unable to provide the rate
10,
increases.
11.
Yeah. So if you add that up, we're still below it. The thing on inflation, though, right now, the first half of the year for Cincinnati, it's negative. It's deflation because of the price of our fuel and our food has gone down according to Census or Department of Commerce or whoever's creating that. So, that'll get us closer in line if we're able to do this 2% going into 16.
Yeah. Well, I don't think we should do more than keeping up with inflation. So,
we've got a gap, though, if we look back over history, and we look at Cincinnati when we do that. I know the commissioners' increases look at all cities. They don't specifically look at the Cincinnati when they do the cost of living or inflationary index.
Okay.
We'll make sure it doesn't get way out of line.
Yeah, we're not going to catch up. We just.
Not in 1 year, that's for sure.
Yeah, we just need to keep up. We're not going to catch up.
With inflation going down, though, and if we can do something, that will help us get closer.
Narrow the gap. Okay. Any questions? Any other questions?
Good job, as always.
It's a start. Like I said, these numbers will probably be tweaked between now and the end, now and November. And our goal
When's your
is
presentation on the Capitol?
on capital,
Yeah.
whenever.
Whenever?
Yeah.
We have operating now.
Yep. Capital, I mean, yes, this is general fund.
Right.
This is not the rest of the funds.
Right.
So the appropriation will be for all the funds. We can talk capital that, or I can talk capital anytime between now and then. What we need to pinpoint a little more on capital is timing. And I saw the engineers talking about a year or more. So we can push some of that out. Right now, that's in the 2015 plan for capital. So.
Okay. Any questions from the audience? Okay, then that concludes our informal session. Thanks for joining us, and God bless.